I never used to be afraid of trains. Before this happened, I actually liked traveling by train. There was something relaxing about sitting by a window and watching towns, fields, and highways pass by while I didn't have to worry about driving. This happened in October 2022. At the time, I was working as a field technician for a company based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My job required me to visit different facilities around western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio, and sometimes I had to stay overnight. One Thursday, I had an appointment in a small town called Ashland, about 2 hours away from Pittsburgh, by car. I finished the job later than expected, and by the time I was done, it was almost 9:30 at night. I had planned to drive home, but there had been heavy rain that afternoon, and traffic on the highway was backed up because of an accident. I checked my phone and noticed there was a passenger train leaving from a nearby station at 10:18. It wasn't my usual route, but I figured taking the train would be easier. I called my girlfriend and told her I'd probably be home a little after midnight. She asked me if I was sure about taking the train that late. I told her I'd be fine. At that point, I had no reason to think otherwise. The station was almost empty when I arrived. It was one of those small stations that looked like it hadn't changed much in decades. There was a ticket machine, a few benches, a vending machine, and a small covered platform. It was raining lightly again. I bought my ticket and sat under the shelter. There were only 3 other people waiting. An older man sitting at the far end of the bench, a woman wearing a dark green jacket, and a younger guy standing near the edge of the platform with a backpack. Nobody was talking. I remember checking the time several times because the train was already running a few minutes late. At 10:26, I heard the train in the distance. The other 3 people stood up almost immediately. The train arrived a minute later. I got into the second passenger car. The older man went into the first car. The woman got into the same car as me, but sat several rows ahead. The younger guy disappeared into the last car. I found a seat beside the window and put my backpack on the floor. The train was almost completely empty. There were maybe 6 or 7 passengers in the entire car. That didn't bother me. Actually, I liked it. For the first 20 minutes, everything was normal. The rain tapped against the window. The lights inside the car buzzed quietly. Every few minutes, the train would pass a road or a small neighborhood. I put my headphones on but didn't play anything. I just wanted to relax. Around 10:50, I noticed something strange. The woman in the green jacket had moved. She had been sitting several rows in front of me. Now she was sitting directly across the aisle from me. I hadn't seen her move. I assumed she had changed seats because the train was empty. I looked away. A few minutes later, I noticed she was staring out the window. Nothing unusual. Then she turned her head and looked directly at me. I gave her a small, polite smile. She didn't smile back. She just looked at me for a second and then turned back toward the window. I remember thinking she was probably tired. About 10 minutes later, she got up and walked toward the front of the car. I watched her disappear through the connecting door. I didn't think about it again. The train continued through the darkness. Then, around 11:08, it stopped. Not at a station. It just stopped. There were no announcements. The lights stayed on. I looked outside. There was nothing but trees. The train sat there for maybe 2 minutes. Then it started moving again. I figured there had been a signal issue. A few minutes later, the conductor walked through our car. I looked at him as he passed. He didn't say anything. I noticed there was something strange about his expression. He looked nervous, not tired, nervous. I almost asked him what was going on, but he was already gone. I checked my phone. I had one missed call from my girlfriend. I called her back. She answered immediately. "Where are you?" I told her I was still on the train. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked me what train I was on. I told her. She said, "Okay, just text me when you get there." I asked why she sounded worried. She said she wasn't. Then she hung up. I didn't think much of it. A few minutes later, I realized something. The woman in the green jacket was back in her original seat. I could see her from where I was sitting. She was looking down at her phone. I remember feeling confused. I hadn't seen her walk back, but I figured I must have missed it. The train started moving faster. Outside, the trees became a blur. Then the lights inside the car flickered. Once, twice. Then everything went dark. The emergency lights came on a few seconds later. Nobody said anything. I heard someone cough at the other end of the car. Then I heard footsteps. Slow footsteps. Coming from the front of the car, I looked up. A person was walking toward me. I couldn't see their face because the emergency lights were behind them. They stopped about 10 feet away. For some reason, they didn't move. They just stood there. I waited for them to sit down. They didn't. After maybe 20 seconds, the regular lights came back on. The person was gone. I looked toward the front. The connecting door was closed. I felt uncomfortable, but I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe someone had gotten up and gone into the next car. I put my headphones back on. That's when I heard someone whisper my name. I took them off immediately. I looked around. Nobody was looking at me. The woman in the green jacket was still sitting several rows ahead. The other passengers were staring at their phones. I thought I had imagined it. Then my phone vibrated. It was a text from my girlfriend. "Are you okay?" I typed back. "Yeah, why?" She didn't answer. Instead, she called me. I picked up. She sounded different this time. She asked me exactly where I was sitting. I told her. She said, "Are you alone?" I looked around the car. No. There was a pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I think someone is following you." I laughed because I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She told me that after we talked earlier, she had checked the train's route online. She said the train had been delayed. But then she noticed something else. The train's location had stopped updating. She thought maybe her phone was having trouble. Then she received a notification from a tracking app we both used. My location had apparently disappeared for several minutes. I told her I was fine and that I'd call her when I got off. She said, "Don't get off anywhere except the station." I asked her why. She said she didn't know. Then she hung up. I stared at my phone. For the first time that night, I felt genuinely scared. I looked toward the woman in the green jacket. She was gone. Her seat was empty. I looked down the aisle. Nobody. I stood up. I walked toward the front of the car. There was no sign of her. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I walked through the connecting door into the next car. There were only 2 people sitting there. Neither of them was her. I went back to my seat. That's when I noticed my backpack was open. I knew I had zipped it closed. I always did. Nothing appeared to be missing. My wallet was still there. My laptop was still there. My keys were still there. But there was something inside that didn't belong to me. A small piece of folded paper. I opened it. There were only 4 words written on it. Don't get off alone." I stared at those words for several seconds. I didn't know what to do. I looked around the car. Everyone seemed normal. Nobody was looking at me. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. I decided I would get off at the next major station, even if it wasn't my stop. I didn't care anymore. Around 11:45, the train slowed down. I could see lights outside. We were approaching a station. I stood near the door with my backpack. The conductor came through the car. This time, I stopped him. I asked if there had been some kind of problem with the train. He looked at me. Then he looked at the piece of paper in my hand. His face changed. He asked me where I got it. I told him it had been inside my backpack. He didn't answer. Instead, he told me to stay inside the car. Then he walked away. That made everything worse. The train stopped. The doors opened. People began getting off. I stayed where I was. The older man from the station walked past me. The younger guy with the backpack got off too. I didn't see the woman. I watched the platform through the window. Then I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the platform. The woman in the green jacket. She was looking directly at me. I froze. She raised one hand, not waving, just pointing, behind me. I turned around. There was nobody there. When I looked back through the window, she was gone. The doors closed. The train started moving again. I immediately went to the conductor. I told him I had seen the woman. He looked at me for a long time. Then he quietly said, "There hasn't been a woman in that jacket on this train tonight." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. I told him I had seen her at the station before the train left. He said there had been 4 passengers when the train departed, 3 men and 1 woman. The woman was wearing a black coat, not green. I didn't know what to say. I went back to my seat. For the rest of the trip, I didn't move. I kept my backpack on my lap. I kept watching the connecting door. At 12:17, I finally received another message from my girlfriend. It said, "Police are waiting for you at the station." I immediately called her. She told me that after our last call, she had contacted the police because she was worried. She said she had also received a strange message from my phone. I asked what it said. She told me, "He's asleep." I hadn't sent it. When we reached the station, 2 police officers were waiting on the platform. I got off and immediately walked toward them. I explained everything. They checked my backpack. They checked the train. They looked at the piece of paper. One officer asked me if I'd noticed anyone suspicious at the first station. I told him about the younger guy, the older man, and the woman in the green jacket. He wrote everything down. Then he asked me something that still bothers me. He asked if I had ever told anyone which train I was taking. I said no, except for my girlfriend. He nodded. They searched the station and reviewed the security footage. The footage showed me arriving alone. It showed the older man. It showed the younger man. And it showed the woman in the green jacket. She was there, exactly as I remembered her. The officer looked at me and said, they couldn't explain it. She had boarded the train. She had walked through the station. She had been on the platform. But according to the train's passenger records, she wasn't supposed to be there. They never found her. They also couldn't determine who put the note inside my backpack. The police checked the train cameras, but there were several blind spots between the cars. They told me someone could have opened my bag without me noticing. That explanation made sense. But there was one thing they couldn't explain. My backpack had been between my feet, the entire time. I would have noticed someone reaching into it. At least, I think I would have. I never took another late-night train after that. I still travel for work sometimes, but I drive now. I kept the piece of paper. It's in a drawer in my apartment. I've never thrown it away. The strangest part is that about 6 months after the incident, I was cleaning out my old phone and found a screenshot I didn't remember taking. It was a picture of the train schedule from that night. At the bottom of the screenshot, someone had written a message using the phone's editing tool. It said, "You were never supposed to take this train." I checked the metadata. The screenshot had been created while I was already on the train. I don't know who made it, I don't know who the woman was, and I still don't know who put that note inside my backpack. But sometimes, when I'm driving late at night and I pass a train moving in the opposite direction, I find myself looking through the windows, and every once in a while, I swear I see a woman in a green jacket sitting alone, staring straight at me. I know that sounds impossible, but after what happened that night, I stopped assuming that everything has a reasonable explanation.